All right, welcome to Talking Investing. I'm Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to talk about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. The Bitcoin miners had a little bit of a rough week last week. We're going to go through all the numbers. We're going to take a look at last week. We're going to take a look at year to date, all of our normal charts. Also, the month of May is over, so we're going to get our May operational updates. We already got one. I'm going to quickly go through that this morning. Bitfarms put out their monthly report. And I'm also going to talk about what my expectation is for everybody's May monthly operational update. So we got a lot to go through. If you're new here, we talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners all the time. So if that's content you're interested in, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, if everybody could please remember to smash the like button. We're going for 500 likes on this video. I want to thank everybody for smashing the like button. It does help the channel out a lot. I'm filming this Monday morning. Bitcoin is actually up quite a bit Monday morning versus the charts we're going to look at. We're pushing 70,000 as we speak, but of course, it's only the beginning of the week. The U.S. equity markets have not even opened yet as I'm making this video, so we're going to have to see how the week goes. But let's take a look back at what happened last week. Okay, this is week over week from last Friday. You're going to see a little bit of a difference. Over the last 5 or 6 weeks, Bitcoin miners have been outperforming Bitcoin. That was a trend reversal from the first 3.5 months of the year. We're going to take a look at all these charts. The first 3.5 months of the year were very tough. We're in a period of time where the Bitcoin miners seem to be catching up, but last week they did take a little bit of a pause. So you're going to see on this chart, you're going to see Bitcoin was down 2% on the week last week. A lot of the Bitcoin miners were plus or minus the exact same thing here. You're going to see between plus 2% and minus 1%. There were 2 outliers to the upside, but most of the Bitcoin miners actually underperformed Bitcoin this last week, particularly the larger caps. So if we take a look at the top 3 market caps, Marathon was down 8%. CleanSpark was down 9%, and RIOT was down 6%. So those are all underperforming Bitcoin last week. That's very different than what's been going on for really the previous month prior to that. So we did take what I think is a little bit of a pause. The number one thing that I'm going to be looking at this week is, do we get back on track and have the Bitcoin miners continue their outperformance of Bitcoin? And when we go to the year-to-date chart, you're going to see the Bitcoin miners really need to do that because they fell way behind Bitcoin earlier in the year. Let's look at the other side of this. Bitfarms was the biggest winner of the week, up 11%. In the same time, Bitcoin was down 2%. But there was a specific reason for this. As most of you probably know, Riot Blockchain made an offer to buy Bitfarms. That offer came in at $2.30. So as a result, Bitfarms stock gravitated closer to that price. Now, it did not close the week at $2.30. It closed the week at $2.24. So I do think there will be a little bit of arbitrage left in between that as we see how this deal goes. But I also think you're going to see Bitfarms trade sideways for a little while. This deal does put in a little bit of a floor and a ceiling for Bitfarms stock price with a specific bid of $2.30 in. I don't think the price is going to deviate too far away from that in the meantime. Drop down in the comments your thoughts on this potential buyout. We did a poll on Friday on the channel, and it showed that about 80% of the people don't think this buyout is actually going to go through at $2.30, but drop down your thoughts in the comments section below as to what you think might happen. So the other big winner on the week was TeraWulf. They were up 5%, and then you'll see basically a lot of Bitcoin miners were basically just flat on the week. So let's go to the next chart, and you're going to see this is a little bit of a departure from what's been happening over the last month and a half. Okay, so if we take a look at the last 6.5 weeks, and that includes the week that we just looked at, you're going to see that 17 of the 19 Bitcoin miners are outperforming Bitcoin, and a bunch of them are dramatically outperforming Bitcoin. Only 2 Bitcoin miners are underperforming in this 6.5 week period, and this 6.5 week period started on April 16th. That appeared to be a local bottom for the Bitcoin miners. We talked about that on that day and in the few days after that, and that has held up for all but 1 Bitcoin miner. There's only 1 Bitcoin miner in the red. Hive is down 1% since that time, so basically even. This bottom has held for all the rest, and some of these have really had a big reversal and big moves to the upside since then. So at the top of this, you're going to see Iris Energy up 87% in that 6.5 week period. Core Scientific up 79%. So those are 2 of the larger market cap Bitcoin miners, and they've had huge runs in this 6.5 week period. Then we get to some smaller microcap and nanocap Bitcoin miners, Stronghold and Mawson. Stronghold up 70%. They did announce that they were considering selling the company. They got a big bump on that. At one point, they were up over 100%, so they are pulling back from their peak. But you're going to see then some of the larger caps. Marathon's up 37%. Riot is up 24%, and Cleanspark only up 17% in that time frame. That is a little bit more than double what Bitcoin is doing, but lagging behind, you can see some of these leaders. There are about 6 or 7 companies on this list of 19 companies that are basically turned into microcap or nano-cap stocks. So we've been talking on the channel. I've gotten a lot of requests to maybe take those off of these charts. So let me know in the comments section below whether you'd rather see those very small Bitcoin miners and continue to track those, or if you would prefer to see those get removed from these charts. So on this chart, in the last 6.5 weeks, where we see basically everything in the green except for Hive, which was down just 1%. If we go to year to date, you're going to see a very different picture. So on the year to date, the Bitcoin miners continue to significantly lag Bitcoin. The first 3.5 months of the year, between January 1st and April 16th, that bottom that we talked about, the Bitcoin miners underperformed Bitcoin in a significant way. So even with this 6.5 week period of catch up, most of the Bitcoin miners are still in the red year to date. So they're not even back to break even from the beginning of the year. In that same period of time, as of Friday, Bitcoin was up 61%. Again, Monday morning so far, Bitcoin's up a couple $1,000s even from here. So there's only 2 Bitcoin miners in the green. Cleanspark at 46%. Cleanspark has been pretty competitive with Bitcoin all year long. And then you've got Iris Energy, which last week popped into the green, and it was fairly flat last week, so it stayed green, up 9% on the year. After that, you drop off to TeraWolf, down 9%, and Cypher down 10%. So those are still some of the larger Bitcoin miners, and they are still within striking distance of going into the green. So if we can get back on track, it's potential we can see a bunch of these Bitcoin miners flip into the green, maybe this week or maybe over the next couple of weeks. So the ones that I'm looking at in particular are TeraWolf, Cypher, Core Scientific down 14%, Marathon down 17%. So those are within striking distance. Now, I do expect a lot more of these Bitcoin miners to go green over the next coming months. I think those 4 that we just mentioned could go green as soon as this week or next week if Bitcoin continues to stay healthy. But then you're going to see we have a bunch of Bitcoin miners down, between 35 and 45%. Some of the larger ones are in this group. HUT is down 35%. Riot is down 37%. And then we have 5 Bitcoin miners down between 61 and 67%. These are all now microcap and nanocap stocks. And these are some of the stocks we're talking about where a lot of people are losing interest in these. I'm not sure if anybody's investing in these. So let me know in the comments section. Is anybody invested in Gree or Stronghold or Mawson or Argo Blockchain or any? You can see that the market has lost confidence in these. These are down over 60% year to date in a year where Bitcoin's up over 60%. So that is a large disparity in performance. Quickly, we'll just take a look at a chart on a larger time frame. This is comparing Bitcoin to November of 2021, which was Bitcoin's high from the previous cycle. Bitcoin peaked out at $69,000 in the middle of November of 2021. So you see, since that point in time, as of last Friday, Bitcoin was down just 2%. As of this morning, actually, Bitcoin is back above 69,000, so above the previous cycle's high. But the Bitcoin miners are all lagging behind, some of them dramatically. Again, you're going to see at the bottom here, 4 Bitcoin miners are down between 98 and 99%. So, these are some of the ones that it seems like the market has all but given up on. But on the other end of the spectrum, Cleanspark is down 32%. That's the best performing Bitcoin miner. Then it drops off to Cypher, down 63%. There's several of these that are between 71 and 84%. Some of these Bitcoin miners, I still believe, can take out their high from the previous cycle. In other words, I do think that some of these can get from these numbers back to green. Obviously, this is not financial advice. These are ultra high risk investments. They are also massively volatile. I do like to point that out in every video. I think it's very important, especially if you're new to this space, to understand the massive volatility. And I think this chart shows better than any just how volatile these are and just how high risk these Bitcoin mining investments are. Okay, just recapping what happened in the overall market last week, you'll see it was a pretty tough week for the market. Almost everything was in the green. Ethereum was the exception. So Ethereum riding the wave of the approvals of the ETH ETFs had an up week of just 1%, so not a giant up week, but last week was a massive up week for Ethereum, up over 20%. Then the Russell 2000 was actually break even. Everything else was in the red last week. Silver and gold, which when we get to the year to date, you're going to see they have been performing very well. They were down, but very small numbers, 0.1, gold down 0.4, S&P down just a 0.5%, the Dow down 1%, and the NASDAQ down 1.1%. So actually, the biggest loser on the week last week was Bitcoin, pulling back 2.3%. So if we zoom out year to date, you're going to see a different picture. You're going to see the two cryptocurrencies continue to outperform the field fairly substantially. But there was a flip. Ethereum has passed Bitcoin year to date. Bitcoin's been a leader on this chart almost every single week all year, but Ethereum now, with the approval of the ETFs, has pulled ahead by just a little bit, basically 64.5% to 61%, so very close. Then you've got the two precious metals. Silver up 27% year to date. This is one of the best years silver's had in decades. Gold up 12.6%, and then you're going to see the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 are having very good years. They both did hit new all-time highs within the last couple of weeks. The NASDAQ up 11.5%, the S&P up 10.5% year to date. So you can see the two that are lagging behind are the Dow up 2.6%. You know we don't pay a lot of attention to the Dow on this channel. And the Russell 2000 up just 2% on the year. The Russell 2000 continues to lag the other major US indexes. It's been now 3+ years that the Russell 2000 has not reached a new all-time high. So this is something I continue to keep my eye on because I do believe that the Bitcoin miners, Bitcoin itself, and really all risk-on assets more closely follow the Russell 2000 than they do the other major US indexes. So I continue to wait for this breakout, and until we get some relief on inflation, until we see that the Fed is going to start to lower interest rates, I do think the Russell 2000 will continue to lag the field a little bit. But of course, we'll keep our eye on this and we'll see what happens. Now I want to talk about the May operational updates. Today is June 1st, so we did get Bitfarms operational update. I'll talk about that in a minute, but in general, I want to talk about my expectation of what I think these reports should be, and it's based on a couple of things. So the halving happened on April 20th, so basically 2/3 of the month of April was pre-halving, 1/3 was post-halving. So essentially, if you do the math, all other things being equal, the Bitcoin miners should be mining about 60% in May of what they did in April. Now there's other variables that impact that, but I want to go through really the main other variable, and that would be the difficulty level. So over the last year, the difficulty level has been skyrocketing. However, post-halving, you're going to see we did have one adjustment that was down 5.62%. So the May adjustments were down 5.62% and then up 1.48%. So all of May, the difficulty level actually decreased versus April. So that should really help the Bitcoin miners. For the first time really in about a year, we have a month where the difficulty level averaged less than the previous month. So all other things being equal, we should see these Bitcoin miners mine at least 60% of what they did in the previous month, if not more, particularly if they added exahash. So that's going to be my benchmark. Somewhere between 60 and 65% of the previous month, I think will represent a decent month. It will be basically on par with April. I do think some of the Bitcoin miners are going to exceed that. I think there were a few Bitcoin miners that grew in exahash and that had good months. I know that Marathon got a lot of their machines back online, so I think we're going to see Marathon in particular beat that. But I think we're going to see several Bitcoin miners beat that, and I think we're going to see a few underperform. I'll just take a quick look at Bitfarms. And again, I do think Bitfarms is going to be trading in a pretty tight range based on the fact that there is a bid in from RIOT to buy this company for $2.30. So if we take a look at what Bitfarms did, they announced that they mined 156 Bitcoin in the month of May. They mined 269 Bitcoin in the month of April. So 60% of their April would have been 161 Bitcoin. So they actually mined a little bit less than 60%, more like 58%. So to me, that is basically, it's within the margin of error, but a little bit disappointing because you can see their average operating hash rate went from 6.1 to 6.4. So that went up. The difficulty level went down. Yet they didn't quite hit that 60 target, and they did talk about some curtailment that they needed to do, and that's probably why. So we may see other companies, although in the month of May, I'm not expecting a lot of forced curtailment by most of the other Bitcoin miners. So that's how I'm going to be viewing these monthly operational reports. Bear in mind that for me, that 60 to 65% of the previous month is the number that I'm going to be looking at as kind of a benchmark number. This is the first of the monthly operational reports for the month of May, so we will go through those as they come out. So that's what's going on with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. And remember, please consider subscribing to the channel. Of course, if you enjoy this content, please consider smashing the like button. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.